Hi everyone, welcome back to Office Hours with the Professor, the show where I say things. Tonight, Badass Historical Chinese Bros, Part 2, the Duke of Zhou, or as I like to call him, the Duke of Bro. So, the Duke of Bro lived during the 11th century BC, and he lived in the ancient cradle of Chinese civilization, the Yellow River Basin. So if this is China, let's draw China. Remember our chicken. Let's see, 2 eggs, and here's the Yellow River Basin. So around here somewhere. And the Duke, along with his older brother, Wu, okay? So, older brother, Wu, that's W-U, and they lived in the Yellow River Basin, and they were vassal lords of the once mighty Shang dynasty. Okay, so, one more time. The Duke of Zhou and his brother Wu are the vassals of the Shang dynasty. Okay, and this is a once mighty dynasty. They had ruled the land for 500 years, but their apogee had long since passed. While the first Shang kings were wise and virtuous rulers, the incumbent guy was a despotic psychopath who spent his days paddling around a swimming pool filled with beer. The dude actually had a beer pool. I think that's worth writing down. So when he wasn't doing laps in his beer pool, he enjoyed coming up with increasingly inventive ways to kill the people who criticized him. So not a super cool guy. So Wu and the Duke and the other vassals knew that this wicked king would get around to them sooner or later. So before long, they rose up in revolt. And the leader of the rebel army was Wu, okay? Wu was the leader of the rebel army, and his brother, the Duke of Zhou, was the right-hand man. So, having overthrown the Shang is no more. The Shang have been overthrown. Wu set up the Zhou dynasty. So, let's write that down. Wu established the Zhou dynasty. I think in the year 1046 BC, and they overthrew the Zhou and they overthrew the Shang and set up the Zhou dynasty as their successor state. Now, Wu himself did not have much time to enjoy his victory, since he died just 2 years into his reign. Thus passed the throne to his young son, with my man, the Duke of Bro, as regent. Okay, so the Duke of Zhou is now the regent to the young king. Okay, so now for a lesser man, this would have been a great time to usurp the throne, but not the Duke of Bro. Having ruled wisely and well in the young king's place, he was perfectly happy to hand over power when the young man came of age and continued his career as a royal advisor. His loyalty, therefore, made him a Chinese culture hero even to this day. Confucius, for example, loved the guy. One of the Duke's greatest accomplishments as regent was to establish a doctrine that would shape the next 3,000 years of Eastern political thought. The mandate of heaven. And we should write this down. Mandate of heaven. Oh, there goes my eraser. Here we go. Mandate of heaven. This is a big deal. Mandate of heaven as established and set forth by the Duke of Zhou. The mandate of heaven basically it's put forth to counter the propaganda of Shang loyalists and pretenders, okay? So essentially the mandate was a divine command that a particular dynasty can rule all under heaven, or in Chinese they have this word Tianxia. 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 Or in Old Chinese, they would have said Lingras. Let's write that down too. Lingras. Lingras. Or in modern Chinese, we say Tianxia. Okay? And this is all under heaven. So whoever held the mandate, that is the reigning monarch, was known as the Son of Heaven. So, I better write this down, all under heaven. So the Son of Heaven ruled all under heaven by the mandate of heaven. Okay? So the Son of Heaven was seen, or the Emperor or the King was seen as a living manifestation of divine will. The mandate, however, was not unconditional. It only applied as long as the ruling dynasty behaved itself. A decadent and a corrupt ruler could expect, sooner or later, to lose the mandate to somebody more deserving. This doctrine of the mandate of heaven was put forth, as I say, mainly to counter Shang loyalists and pretenders who would spread this kind of propaganda. They argued that as descendants of the gods, the Shang had an innate right to rule. Not so fast, said the Duke of Zhou. He didn't argue that the Shang had once been the sons of heaven, but the later Shang's reprehensible conduct had stripped them of the title. Or had they forgotten how the Shang themselves came to power? Well, no one could argue with that. 500 years previously, the Shang themselves had overthrown the previous dynasty. Okay, and this was a dynasty which, although founded by virtuous and exemplary rulers, had become corrupt and tyrannical. So, the Shang pretenders basically came half-stepping, and my man, the DOB, pretty much dropped the mic on their punk asses. Better ask somebody. And thereby, he legitimized his brother's dynasty. The Zhou would go on to become the longest-lasting Chinese dynasty, ruling in some capacity for the next 8 centuries, thanks largely to the efforts of my man, the Duke of Zhou. Another reason the Duke of Zhou rules is that he is, according to legend anyway, the guy who compiled, or maybe even wrote some of, the Shi. And what is the Shi? The Shi is the classic of poetry. That's how it translates from Chinese. It is the classic of poetry, and it's this collection of absolutely gorgeous classical Chinese poetry. It's just a joy to read. I'm in the middle of it right now. It's absolutely beautiful. I can't recommend it highly enough if you're into this kind of thing, which I believe everyone should be. It's not only staggeringly beautiful poetry, but it's also a really cool look into ancient Chinese culture. And we can even use the rhyme schemes in the Shi to actually help reconstruct old Chinese phonology, that is, Chinese as it would have been pronounced 3,000 years ago, which makes it enormously important to the field of historical linguistics. So, let's take a quick look, shall we? How the Dolichos spread itself out, extending to the middle of the valley. Its leaves were luxuriant, the yellow birds flew about and collected on the thickly growing trees, their pleasant notes resounding fair. It's actually about sex. So, anyway, that's it for my main man, the Duke of Zhou, the DOB, make Shang pretenders run and flee. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed meeting him. Up next we have Badass Historical Chinese Bros, Part 3, Guan Yu. See you next time.